Winter of 1887. The blizzard howled through Wyoming territory like a banshee's cry, claiming lives and breaking hearts. At the lonesome train station in Cheyenne, a woman sat frozen on a wooden bench, her breath forming white clouds in the air. She clutched a small leather bag containing everything she owned: $3, a faded photograph, and a heart full of dreams that seemed as cold as the night itself. What happened next would become the most talked about love story from the Colorado River to the Canadian border, changing two lives forever and making history in the untamed American West. The wind cut through Cheyenne like a knife through butter that December night. Elizabeth Libby Montgomery pulled us in, jaw tighter around her shoulders, but it did little to keep out the cold. Her fingers had gone numb hours ago, and her lips were turning blue. The last train east had left 3 hours past, and the next wouldn't come until morning if the storm didn't block the tracks. Libby had been a nurse back in Philadelphia, but when a scandal broke, when a doctor tried to force himself on her and she fought back, nobody would believe her word against his. The hospital dismissed her. No respectable hospital would hire her after that, so she'd taken what little money she had and bought a train ticket west, hoping to find work in one of the mining towns desperate for anyone with medical knowledge. But her money had run out in Cheyenne. The boarding house had turned her away when she couldn't pay for another night. Now she sat on this hard bench, watching her breath fog in the air, wondering if she'd freeze to death before dawn. Her small leather medical bag sat beside her, the only thing of value she owned. The sound of horse hoofs on frozen ground made her look up. Through the swirling snow, she saw a figure approaching on horseback. The man was large, wearing a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low against the wind. As he drew closer, she could see his horse was a magnificent black stallion. The man's clothes, though practical, were of fine quality. He dismounted and tied his horse to the hitching post, then walked toward the station. His boots were expensive leather, she noticed, and he moved with the confident stride of a man accustomed to having his way. When he pushed through the station door, a gust of wind and snow followed him inside. "Evening, miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat. His voice was deep and warm. "Mighty cold night, too. Be sitting out here alone." Libby tried to speak, but her teeth were chattering too hard. She managed a small nod. The man studied her with concerned eyes. He was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair and a mustache. Despite the rough weather, he was clean-shaven and well-groomed. His face was withered from years in the sun, but his eyes were kind. "Name's Jack Thornton," he said, pulling off his gloves. "But folks call me Jack. I own the Double T Ranch about 20 miles north of here. I'm in town on business and was heading home." He noticed her medical bag, the way she was dressed. Her clothes were quality but worn. She had the bearing of an educated woman despite her obvious poverty. "Are you a doctor, miss?" he asked gently. "And no, a nurse," Libby managed to say through chattering teeth. "Elizabeth Montgomery, from Philadelphia." Jack's eyes widened. A trained nurse was rarer than gold in Wyoming territory. "Miss Montgomery," he said, his voice filled with concern, "you're going to freeze to death if you stay here much longer. The storm's getting worse. Please let me take you somewhere warm." Libby looked at him, a mixture of hope and weariness. She'd learned not to trust men too easily, but she was desperate. And something about this Jack Thornton seemed different. There was a gentleness in his manner, despite his obvious strength. I don't have money for A hotel, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. That's not your concern right now, Jack said firmly. Kidding. You warm and fed is what matters. We can sort out the rest later. He shrugged out of his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth of it still carrying his body heat made her gasp with relief. The coat smelled of leather, horses, and something else. Perhaps pine soap. Can you walk? He asked. Libby tried to stand, but her legs were too stiff from the cold. Without hesitation, Jack scooped her up in his arms. Her medical bag included. She was light as a feather, and trembling like a leaf. The hotel's just across the street, he said, carrying her toward the door. We'll get you warmed up and fed, and then you can tell me what brings a trained nurse to Wyoming territory in the middle of winter. As they stepped out into the stone, Libby found herself pressed against Jack's chest, his strong arms holding her securely. For the first time in months, she felt safe. She didn't know this man, didn't know his intentions, but somehow she trusted him. Maybe it was the desperate situation, or maybe it was something in his eyes, a kindness she hadn't seen in far too long. The Cattleman's Hotel was the finest in Cheyenne, and when Jack Thornton walked through the front door carrying a half-frozen woman, every head in the lobby turned. The desk clerk, a thin man named Perkins, hurried over. Mr. Thornton, sir. What happened? Found this lady at the train station. Near. Frozen to death, Jack said, still holding Libby. I need your best room. Send up hot food, coffee, and plenty of blankets. Also, get Doc Williams if he's still in town. Right away, sir. Room 12, second floor. Shall I help carry her? I've got her, Jack replied, heading for the stairs. Libby was aware of the stairs and whispers as Jack carried her through the hotel, but she was too cold and exhausted to care about her reputation. The warmth of the building was making her fingers and toes tingle painfully as feeling returned. Jack carried her into a spacious room with a large bed, a fireplace, and fine furniture. He set her gently on a chair by the fire and immediately began building up the flames. The hotel will send up some ladies' clothes, he said, not looking at her as he worked. Yours are damp from the snow. We need to get you warm and dry. A knock at the door announced the arrival of hot coffee, soup, and blankets. Jack tipped the boy generously and sent him away. Then he poured Libby a cup of coffee. His hands were surprisingly gentle for their size. Drink this. Slowly, he said, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Too much heat too fast can be dangerous. Libby sipped the coffee gratefully, feeling warmth spread through her chest. You seem to know something about medicine yourself, she observed, her voice growing stronger. Jack smiled. You learn a few things running a ranch. Men get hurt. Animals get sick. The nearest doctor might be 100 miles away. He pulled up another chair and sat across from her. But I'm no trained nurse. What brought you west, Miss Montgomery? If you don't mind my asking. Libby studied his face in the firelight. He had honest eyes. After what he'd done for her, he deserved an explanation. I worked in a hospital. In Philadelphia, she said carefully. There was trouble. A doctor who wouldn't take no for an answer. When I defended myself, I was dismissed. No hospital back east would hire me after that. Jack's jaw tightened. Anger flashed in his eyes. A man forced himself on you. He tried to, Libby said. I broke his nose with a bedpan. Despite the serious nature of the conversation, Jack's mouth twitched with the hint of a smile. Good for you. I hope. It hurt. It did, Libby said. And for the first time in months she almost smiled too. But it cost me my career. I thought maybe in the West, where doctors are scarce, my past wouldn't matter so much. It doesn't, Jack said firmly. Out here, we judge people by what they do, not by the lies told about them. Back east, a trained nurse is worth her weight in gold in this territory. Another knock interrupted them. A hotel maid entered with an armload of women's clothing, begging ear. Pardon, sir. These are the finest we have. Mrs. Patterson, down the hall, donated them. Said any woman caught in this storm deserves all the help we can give. Thank Mrs. Patterson for her kindness, Jack said, standing. I'll wait downstairs while Miss Montgomery changes. Mr. Thornton, Libby called us. He reached the door. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. Jack paused, his hand on the doorknob. Maybe because I know what it's like to be alone in the world, he said quietly, and maybe because I've been praying for someone like you to come along. Someone like me? A healer? He said, my wrench hands get hurt regular. I've lost good men because there was no one to tend them properly. But more than that, he turned to face her fully. I've been looking for someone special. Someone with strength and courage. Someone who'd break a man's nose rather than let him take. With that, he left the room, closing the door gently behind him. Libby sat by the fire, staring at the closed door. She'd expected many things when she came west, but she'd never expected to meet a man like Jack Thornton, rich enough to own his own ranch, kind enough to help a stranger, respectful enough to leave her alone to change without being asked. She looked at the clothes the maid had brought, a simple but well-made dress of blue wool, undergarments, stockings, even a pair of boots that looked like they might fit. As she changed out of her damp, travel-stained clothes, she couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. For the first time since leaving Philadelphia, she felt a spark of hope. Libby woke to sunlight streaming through the hotel window. The storm had passed, leaving the world covered in pristine white snow. She'd slept better than she had in weeks. A soft knock at the door made her sit up. Miss Montgomery, it's Jack Thornton. Just a moment, she called, quickly braiding her long brown hair and smoothing the borrowed dress. When she opened the door, she found Jack standing in the hallway with a breakfast tray. Morning, he said with a smile that made her heart skip. Thought you might be hungry. How are you feeling? Much better, thank you, she said, stepping aside to let him enter. Mr. Thornton, I don't know how to repay your kindness. Jack, he corrected, setting the tray on a small table. And you don't owe me anything. Though I was hoping we might talk about your plans. They sat across from each other as Libby ate the hearty breakfast of eggs, bacon, biscuits, and jam. The food was delicious. I don't have many plans, she admitted. I was hoping to find work in a mining camp, but I'm not sure how to get there, or even which camps might need a nurse. Jack leaned back in his chair, studying her. Mining camps are rough places for a woman alone. Dangerous, too. Most of those men haven't seen a decent woman in months. They don't always remember their manners. I can take care of myself, Libby said with quiet determination. I'm sure you can, Jack agreed, but there might be another option. My ranch covers 50,000 acres. I employ about 60 men year-round. During roundup, that number goes up to nearly 100. These men work hard and get hurt regular. Broken bones, guts, burns, snake bites, you name it. Libby set down her coffee cup, interested. You're offering me work. I'm offering you a position as the ranch's nurse. Jack said. Good pay, comfortable quarters, all the medical supplies you need. You'd have your own cabin near the main house, and cookie that our cook would make sure you're well fed. It sounded almost too good to be true. What would you expect in return? Jack's expression grew serious. Honest work for honest pay. Tend the men when they are hurt. Help with difficult births among the livestock. Maybe teach some of the hands basic first aid. Nothing more than that. And you'd expect nothing personal. Understanding dawned in Jack's eyes. Miss Montgomery, Libby, I'm not the kind of man who'd take advantage of a woman's desperate situation. If something personal were to develop between us, it would be because we both wanted it. Well, because you felt obligated. Libby studied his face. His eyes were clear and honest. Everything about his behavior had been that of a gentleman. How far is your ranch? She asked. 20 miles north. It's called the Double T after my initials. Jackson Thomas Thornton. We raise some of the finest cattle and horses in Wyoming territory. The work is hard but honest. The men who ride for me are good people. You said you've been looking for a healer. Haven't you tried to hire a doctor? Jack laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've tried. Posted notices from Denver to Kansas City. Most doctors want to practice in towns. Treat wealthy patients. Ranch work is too uncertain. Too dangerous. Not profitable enough for most of them. What? You'd hire a woman. I'd hire anyone with the skills and courage to do the job, Jack said firmly. Out here, we care more about what a person can do than whether they wear pants or a dress. Libby considered the offer. It was better than anything she dared hope. Thorough, but it seemed too perfect. There had to be a catch. What aren't you telling me? She asked. Jack smiled appreciatively. Smart as well as skilled. All right. Here's the truth of it. The Double T is a working ranch. Not a fancy state. The winters are hard. The summers. We're 20 miles from the nearest town. You'd be the only woman on the ranch most of the time. Except for Cookie's wife, Martha, who helps in the kitchen. It can be lonely. I've been lonely in cities. Full of people, Libby said quietly. At least ranch loneliness would be honest. There's something else, Jack continued. I'm not just a rancher. My family has money. Quite a bit of it. My father made a fortune in shipping. I've done well with investments too. Some people might say you're trying to catch yourself a wealthy husband. Libby's chin came up defiantly. Let them say what they want. I know my own heart and intentions. I believe you do, Jack said softly, but I wanted you to know what you might be walking into. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the snow-covered street through the window. Finally, Libby spoke. When would you want me to start? Jack's face lit up with a smile. Does that mean you'll take the position? It means I'll try it, Libby said carefully. If it doesn't work out for either of us, I'll move on. No hard feelings. Fair enough, Jack said, standing and extending his hand. Welcome to the Double T, Nurse Montgomery. As Libby shook his hand, she felt a spark of electricity pass between them. From a look in Jack's eyes, he felt it too. This job might be more complicated than she'd thought, but for the first time in months she was looking forward to the future. The ride to the Double T Ranch took 3 hours through snow-covered countryside that took Libby's breath away. Jack had bought her a warm coat, riding boots, and other necessities in Cheyenne, refusing to take no for an answer. "Consider it, and advance on your salary," he'd said with a familiar grin. Now, as they rode side by side, Libby felt a sense of freedom she'd never experienced. The landscape was vast and beautiful. Jack pointed out landmarks. A creek, a grove of cottonwood trees. Finally, the boundary markers of the Double T. "There she is," Jack said with obvious pride as they crested a hill. Libby gasped at the sight below. Then, the Double T Ranch sprawled across a valley like a small town, a large, well-built main house of logs and stone with a wide porch, a bunkhouse, stables, a corral, a blacksmith shop, various other outbuildings. Smoke rose from several chimneys. Men worked despite the cold. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "Wait until spring," Jack replied, "when the grass is green and the wildflowers are blooming. There's no prettier sight in all of Wyoming." As they rode into the ranch yard, men emerged from various buildings to greet them. Word had obviously spread. "Boys," Jack called out as he dismounted, "I want you to meet Miss Elizabeth Montgomery. She's our new nurse." A cheer went up from the assembled men. Libby felt her cheeks redden. A grizzled cowboy with grey whiskers stepped forward. "Name's Tom Bradley, miss. I'm the foreman here. Can't tell you how glad we are to have someone with medical training on the ranch." "Thank you, Mr. Bradley," Libby said as Jack helped her down. "I hope I can be of help." "Oh, you will be," said another man with a bandaged hand. "I cut myself on barbed wire yesterday. It's been paining me something fierce." "I'll take a look at it after I get settled," Libby promised. Jack led her toward a small, well-built cabin, about 50 yards from the main house. "This will be your home," he said, opening the door. The cabin was simple but comfortable. A main room that served as both living area and office. A small bedroom. A kitchen with a wood stove. A fire had already been lit. The rooms were warm and welcoming. Cookie's wife Martha stocked the kitchen, Jack explained. "The boys brought over furniture and linens. If you need anything else, just let me know." Libby walked around, touching the simple wooden furniture, admiring the views from the windows. It was perfect. "There's one more thing," Jack said, leading her to a room she hadn't noticed. "I thought you might need this." He opened the door to reveal a fully equipped medical office. An examination table, cabinets full of supplies, surgical instruments, medicines. Everything was clean, well organized, and better equipped than some hospitals back east. "Jack," she breathed, overwhelmed. "This must have cost a fortune." "A good nurse is worth a fortune," he said simply. "Besides, I ordered most of this months ago, hoping I'd eventually find someone to use it." Libby felt tears prick her eyes. After months of rejection and hardship, this kindness was almost too much to bear. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Jack said with a smile. "Wait until you've seen what these cowboys can do to themselves. You'll earn every penny." As if to prove his point, a knock came at the door. Tom Bradley entered, supporting a young cowboy hopping on one foot. "Sorry to bother you, miss. Billy here just got stepped on by his horse." "Bring him into the medical room," Libby said, shifting instantly into professional mode. "Let's get that boot off and see what we're dealing with." As she examined Billy's foot bruise, but Thankfully not broken, Libby was aware of Jack watching from the doorway. When she looked up after bandaging the foot, she found him smiling. What? She asked. Nothing, he said. Just thinking this might work out even better than I hoped. That evening, after treating 3 more minor injuries, Libby sat in her new cabin, processing everything. 2 days ago, she'd been freezing and penniless. Now she had a job, a home, and respect. And then there was Jack Thornton himself, strong but gentle, wealthy but unpretentious. He treated her as an equal while still being protective. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Jack stood on her porch with a steaming cup. Thought you might like some hot chocolate before bed. Martha makes the best in Wyoming territory. That's very thoughtful, Libby said, accepting the cut. Would you like to come in for a few minutes? Jack hesitated. I don't want to compromise your reputation. I think my reputation can survive a brief conversation with my employer, Libby said with a smile. Besides, who's going to see us way out here? Jack entered and sat by the fireplace. The hot chocolate was rich and warming. However, he's settling in, he asked. Better than I dared hope, she admitted. The men have been respectful. The cabin is perfect. That medical room is incredible, Good, Jack said. Then he fell silent, staring into the fire. What is it? Libby asked, sensing something troubling him. I want to be honest with you about something, he said finally. When I found you at that train station, it wasn't entirely by chance. Libby set down her cup, suddenly weary. What do you mean? I'd been in town on business, yes. But I was also making inquiries about finding a nurse or doctor. The hotel clerk mentioned a woman with medical training had been asking about work. I went to the station, hoping to find you. So you knew who I was? I knew a trained nurse was supposed to be on the evening train from the east, Jack said. I didn't know your name or circumstances until I found you there. Libby considered this. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because I wanted you to take the job based on its merits, not because you felt obligated to the man who rescued you. It made sense. Libby found herself respecting him even more for his honesty. Is there anything else I should know? Jack met her eyes directly. Just this. I'm attracted to you, Libby. Have been since the moment I saw you. But I want you to know your job here is secure regardless of your personal feelings toward me. I won't pressure you. Libby's heart skipped a beat. The attraction was mutual. Thank you for being honest, she said softly. And for the record, the attraction isn't one-sided. They looked at each other across the firelight, both aware something significant was beginning, both knowing it was too soon, too complicated. Well, Jack said, standing, I should let you rest. Tomorrow Cookie wants to show you the kitchen gardens. Martha's eager to give you the full tour. Jack, Libby called as he reached the door. Thank you for everything. I haven't felt this hopeful about the future in a very long time. Neither have I, he said quietly. And then he was gone, leaving Libby alone with her thoughts in the warm glow of possibility. Spring came early to Wyoming that year. Libby settled into her new life. She treated broken bones, snake bites, delivered foals and calves. That cowboys came to trust and respect her. But it was her growing relationship with Jack that occupied her thoughts. He maintained professional boundaries by day, but their evening conversations on her porch became a cherished routine. They talked about everything. One evening in late April, as they watched the sunset paint the mountains, Jack grew serious. Libby, there's something I need to tell you about my past, he said. I was married before. Her name was Rebecca. We were childhood sweethearts in Texas. Libby felt a stab of jealousy, followed by guilt. Of course a man like Jack would have been married. What happened to her? She asked gently. Fever. Took her 3 years ago, Jack said, pain in his voice. We've been trying to have children. It never happened. When she died, I thought my chance at happiness died with her. I'm sorry, Libby said, squeezing his hand. She must have been very special. She was, Jack agreed, but she was nothing like you. Rebecca was gentle, delicate, content to tend her flowers. You're strong, independent, willing to face challenges head on. I love that about you. Libby's heart stopped. Jack, I know it's too soon, he said quickly. I know we work together. It complicates things, but I can't pretend my feelings are just professional respect. Mine aren't either, Libby admitted. But you're right. It is complicated. What would the men think? What would people say? I don't care what they say, Jack said firmly, but I care what you think, what you want. Before Libby could answer, Tom Bradley came running up, his face pale with worry. Boss, Miss Libby, there's been an accident. Lightning spooked the horses. Young Danny got trampled. He's hurt bad. Libby was on her feet instantly, professional duty overriding personal feelings. Where is he? Bunkhouse. Cookie and the boys carried him there. Libby ran for her medical supplies. Jack saddled horses to ride for the doctor. But when she saw Danny's injuries, she knew there was no time. The 18-year-old was unconscious. His chest crushed, breathing labored. Internal bleeding was obvious. Clear. A table, she ordered. I need light, hot water, clean sheets. Tom, I need you to assist me. Miss Libby. Tom said uncertainly, shouldn't we wait for the doc? He'll be dead before the doctor gets here. Libby said firmly, I've done the surgery before. We can save him, but we have to act now. For 3 hours, Libby worked over Danny's broken body, repairing internal damage, setting bones. The cowboys watched in awed silence. When she finally stepped back, exhausted, Danny's breathing was steady, his color improved. He'll live, she announced. The bunkhouse erupted in cheers. Jack, who had returned with the doctor, watched from the doorway with undisguised admiration. The doctor pronounced Libby's work as fine as any surgeon's. Later that night, after Danny was moved to a cabin for monitoring, they finally talked. What you did tonight? Jack said on her porch in the moonlight. It was incredible. You saved that boy's life. It's what any trained nurse would have done, Libby said modestly. No, Jack said firmly. It's what you did, and it's why I love you. There it was, out in the open. Libby looked at this man who had rescued her, given her a home and meaningful work, and now looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you too, she said simply. Jack leaned over and kissed her, gentle and sweet, under the star-filled Wyoming sky. When they broke apart, both were breathless. Marry me, Libby, Jack said. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated, but I can't imagine my life without you now. Jack, Libby began. He held up a hand. You don't have to answer tonight. Just promise me you'll think about it. I will, she promised, though in her heart she already knew her answer. Word of the proposal spread like wildfire. To Libby's surprise, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. That wedding was planned for the first Saturday in June. It became the social event of the season. Cowboys from neighboring Ranches, townspeople from Cheyenne, even business associates from Denver came. Libby wore an ivory silk dress Jack had ordered from San Francisco. Martha wove wildflowers into her hair. She looked radiant as she walked down the aisle between ranch buildings, Tom Bradley proudly escorting her. Jack waited at the altar, on a porch of the main house, dressed in his finest black suit, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen. And when their eyes met, his nervousness vanished, replaced by pure joy. The ceremony was performed by a circuit preacher. His words about love and partnership seemed especially meaningful. To you, Jackson Thomas Thornton, take Elizabeth Rose Montgomery, to have and to hold, till death do you part. I do, Jack said firmly. And do you, Elizabeth Rose Montgomery, take Jackson Thomas Thornton, to have and to hold, till death do you part. I do, Libby replied, her voice strong and sure. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Jack's kiss was passionate enough to draw cheers from the cowboys. The celebration was legendary. A feast, music, dancing, storytelling. The most meaningful moment came when Denny, still recovering, stood to make a toast with lemonade. To Mrs. Thornton he said, "The woman who saved my life and made our lost the happiest man in Wyoming. May your love story inspire generations to come." The crowd erupted. Libby cried happy tears as Jack squeezed her hand. As the evening wound down, they found themselves alone on the porch of their new home. "Well, Mrs. Thornton," Jack said, taking her hands, "how does it feel to be a married woman?" "It feels like coming home," Libby replied honestly, "like everything before was just preparing me for this moment." Jack pulled her close, and they danced slowly to music drifting from the bunkhouse. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "A beautiful gold locket." "Jack, it's beautiful," she breathed as he fastened it around her neck. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a tiny photograph of them from that day. Engraved on the opposite side were the words, "Forever and always, JT. Now you'll always have me close to your heart," Jack said softly. "I already do," Libby whispered, and kissed him under the star-filled Wyoming sky. The first year of marriage brought joys and challenges. Libby continued as ranch nurse and took on the role of ranch wife, proving a natural. Both her medical skills became legendary. She treated a cholera outbreak, delivered twins in a blizzard, removed a bullet from a sheriff. But it was her partnership with Jack that made their marriage special. He valued her opinions, never making decisions without her. Their love story became the talk of the territory. Reporters came from Chicago to write about the millionaire cowboy and his nurse wife. But their happiness was tested when her past came back. Dr. Harrison arrived in Cheyenne, investigating malpractice and questioning her right to practice. "He's come to cause trouble," Libby told Jack. "Let him come," Jack said grimly. "He'll find things are different out here." Harrison arrived with a territorial marshal and official papers. He was thin, pale, with calculating eyes. "Mrs. Thornton," he said, with mock politeness, "or should I say, Miss Montgomery, I'm here to investigate reports of illegal medical practice. My wife is a trained nurse," Jack said, stepping protectively in front of her. "Certificates meaningless if dismissed for moral turpitude," Harrison replied smoothly. "Did you tell your husband about your behavior in Philadelphia?" "I told him about a coward who got his nose broken for his trouble," Libby said steadily. "Your word against mine," Harrison sneered. "I'm a respected physician. You're just a woman of questionable virtue." That was as far as he got before Jack's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling. The marshal reached for his gun, but found himself facing 30 angry cowboys. They had a proper hearing in Cheyenne. Half the territory showed up to support Libby. Patient after patient testified to her skill and compassion. The Cheyenne doctor praised her surgical abilities. The territorial governor sent a letter. Harrison's accusations fell apart. He'd been dismissed for drinking and incompetence. He'd harbored a grudge for years. When Tom Bradley testified about Libby saving Danny's life, the judge's decision was swift. Miss S. Thornton, your service has been exemplary. Your certificate is officially recognized. You are authorized to practice medicine throughout Wyoming Territory. As for you, Dr. Harrison, I suggest you leave immediately before these good people decide to show you the same hospitality you've shown their beloved nurse. The courtroom erupted. Jack swept Libby into his arms. It's over, he whispered. He can't hurt you anymore. We did it together, Libby replied, looking into his eyes. We can face anything together. That night, celebrating, Libby realized their love story had become bigger than themselves. A symbol of the American dream, that in the West people could reinvent themselves, that hard work and love could overcome any obstacle. By 1892, 5 years after their marriage, Jack and Libby Thornton were one of the most influential couples in Wyoming. The Double T expanded to over 100,000 acres. There, cattle and horses were renowned, but it was their community contributions that set them apart. Libby established the first real hospital in the territory. She started a nursing school. Her innovations were written about in medical journals back east. Jack served in the territorial legislature, advocated for statehood, invested in railroads and mining. His greatest achievement was the town he built, Thornton, Wyoming, complete with schools, churches, shops, and homes for his employees. Their love story made history, inspiring countless others, but their greatest joy was their 3 children. Twin boys born in 1890, a daughter in 1892. Little Thomas and Jackson Jr. showed signs of their father's love for the land and their mother's compassion. Baby Rebecca, named for Jack's first wife with Libby's blessing, was the light of their lives. She's going to be a hero like her mother, Jack said one evening, watching her sleep. Look at those gentle hands. Or a rancher like her father, Libby replied with a smile. Those hands look strong enough to handle horses. Maybe both, Jack said, pulling his wife into his arms. In this family, we believe in unlimited possibilities. As they stood together, watching their children sleep, Libby reflected on her journey. From that freezing night at the station, to this warm, love-filled home, an adventure beyond her wildest dreams. Do you ever regret it? Jack asked, as if reading her thoughts. Leaving Philadelphia? Coming west? Taking a chance? On a rough cowboy? Never, Libby said firmly. That night you found me was the luckiest night of my life. Everything before was just preparing me to be your wife and the mother of your children. I love you, Libby Thornton, Jack said, kissing her forehead. And I love you, Jackson Thornton, she replied, forever and always. Outside, the Wyoming wind whispered through the cottonwood trees. A cowboy played a soft tune on his harmonica. Cattle lowed peacefully in the fields. Years later, historians writing about early Wyoming always included the story of Jack and Libby Thornton. Their love story became legend. The Double T thrived under their children. Thomas became a cattleman and Wyoming's first state senator. Jackson Jr. became a doctor, establishing hospitals. Rebecca married a rancher and raised 6 children, passing down the stories. The town of Thornton grew into a thriving city. Libby's hospital became a major medical center. Her nursing school graduated hundreds of women who carried her legacy throughout the West. But the most enduring legacy was the example they set. They proved love could blossom in unlikely circumstances, that two people from different worlds could build a life on mutual respect, shared dreams, and unwavering commitment. In the Cheyenne Museum, visitors can see Libby's medical bag from that cold night in 1887, Jack's wedding ring, their marriage certificate. But the real monument to their love isn't in any museum. It's in the hundreds of couples who found inspiration in their story, who took chances on love, who built lives together in the American West. But back in the museum reads Jack and Elizabeth Thornton, proof that love can conquer all, that the greatest adventures begin with a single act of kindness. And the graveyard on the hill overlooking the Double T, two headstones stand side by side under the big Wyoming sky. Jack died in 1923 at age 86. Libby followed him just 3 months later, unable to bear life without her beloved husband. They are buried together as they lived, hand in hand, heart to heart, their love story complete, but their legend eternal. The inscription on the shared headstone shows and why their children read simply forever and always. A love that made history. Even today, more than a century later, visitors come to Wyoming to see where the famous love story began. They leave inspired by the story of a millionaire cowboy who found a freezing nurse at a train station and discovered that sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the most unexpected places. The legend of Jack and Libby Thornton lives on, a testament to the Peru love, the promise of the American West, the truth that every great love story begins with someone caring enough to reach out to a stranger in need. Their love story truly did make history, proving that